Hello, folks. For those too polite to be looking at their phones, England are all out for 302 at lunch. Thank you, Chris O'Brien. And if there are any Adani protesters hiding in the ceiling, now would be a good time. A man of my size and diet can't take too many surprises. Our guest today is sometimes referred to as the accidental Premier, having accidentally, I guess, won 4 elections, lucked upon the biggest and most surprising upset since Federation, and held together a minority government for nearly 3 years with the help of a shamrock and a rabbit's foot. Nobody ever said Wayne Goss asked it in, or that Borbidge or Beattie or Bligh were flukes, but it's been applied to our guest. Even today, she's compared with Stephen Bradbury, dissed for winning gold because everyone else fell over, ignoring the skill that got him to the starting point in the first place. A better description, I think, might be the unexpected Premier. While people are busy underestimating her, things get done. Like the biofuel industry that wasn't here 3 years ago, or redressing the criminal wrongs committed against the gay community that was left undone for decades. And she did all this without requesting that journalists be sacked or editors be sacked, which is the sign of every despot and tyrant that history has known, and is disgusting. This is not to say that she is not flawless, points that might be pointed out by my gallery colleagues at the end of a very long campaign in just a moment. Political pragmatism has, I think, in some cases, like alcohol laws, been put ahead of principle. She avoids risk and conflict, like I'm told some people avoid carbs. But she comes before us today, before she again asks us to give her another go, so that she can hold on to the best business card in Australia. Please welcome the Premier of the fair, fierce, free and great state of Queensland, Annastacia Palaszczuk.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I want to thank the Queensland Media Club, its sponsors and supporters for once again arranging this event on the eve of the state election. I also want to acknowledge and thank members of the media who've been covering this campaign and often travelling with me. However, we know it's not over yet. 29 hours is a long time in politics. And while almost 750,000 people have already voted across Queensland, those yet to vote, there is a clear choice tomorrow. A choice between a Labor government that will deliver stability and will continue to create full-time jobs, or a chaotic LNP One Nation coalition that will cut them. A choice between certainty and uncertainty. A choice between stability and instability. A choice between a government that consults Queenslanders and one that confronts them. A choice between a government that backs Queenslanders and one that sacks Queenslanders. After all, the leaders of both the LNP and One Nation parties were former Newman government ministers just 3 years ago. Friends, in January 2015, I promised Queenslanders there was a better way for our great state. I promised to restore hope and opportunity for Queenslanders and to restore transparency and decency to government in Queensland. Our best days are ahead of us, and I promise a government that will continue to put Queenslanders first. Over the last 1,000 days, my government has worked hard to deliver our commitments. When I called this election, we had already delivered 505, or 91.3%, of the commitments we made to the people of Queensland in 2015. Over the last 1,000 days, we have put Queenslanders first. We have created jobs and developed skills. We have restored our front line, more doctors and nurses for our hospitals, more teachers for our schools, and more police, more ambulance officers, more firefighters, and more child safety officers in our communities. We have made record investments in health and education, new and improved hospitals and healthcare centres and schools. We have turned around our state's economy. Economic growth is up, business confidence is up, and jobs are up. Since we were elected, 134,300 new jobs have been created across Queensland, and right now we have the strongest jobs growth in the nation. When Malcolm Turnbull launched the LNP campaign in Brisbane last Sunday, he boasted that 335,000 jobs have been created across the nation over the past year. What the Prime Minister didn't say, that almost 1 in 3 of those jobs, 108,000 in fact, were created here in Queensland over the last 12 months. He didn't repeat the Australian Bureau of Statistics statement from last Thursday that said, and I quote, "The highest annual employment growth rates were in Queensland 4.6%, the Australian Capital Territory 3.1%, and Tasmania 3%. We have done this with programs aimed at economic growth and supporting job creation. We have done this in partnership with industry and business. We have targeted new and growing industries, large-scale renewables, biofuels, and advanced manufacturing to generate new jobs and opportunities for Queensland. We have done this with record exports, now more than $70 billion over the past 12 months, an increase of 60% compared to the last 12 months of the Newman government when Tim Nicholls was responsible for trade. And we've been paying down debt, improving our credit rating and delivering budget surpluses each year. We have paid more than $12 billion off general government debt. We had promised to pay down $10 billion. And Moody's have taken us off negative outlook, where they place Queensland under Treasurer Tim Nicholls. And we have done it all without selling our assets. Just as we have done this by working together, there is so much more we can do together. Friends, my plan for Queensland has been put before the people of Queensland. A clear plan to provide Queenslanders with a clear choice. My plan is a jobs plan. My plan is about working with business and industry and local councils through dedicated programs to give Queenslanders the opportunity for local work and to develop skills required. Through that partnership with business and industry, we have reached the milestone through our Back to Work program. Through this program, we have supported more than 8,000 Queenslanders, and with pending applications, we will get to 10,000 jobs supported by Christmas. During the course of the election, I've committed $155 million to extend the program until the 30th of June 2021. Tim Nicholls has said when the program is finished, it is finished. My plan is also about investing in the frontline people and services that Queenslanders deserve. My plan means more teachers, nurses, police and firefighters to continue to serve and protect our great state. My plan will continue to hold our assets in public hands. My plan will pay down debt while also ensuring businesses continue to pay the lowest payroll tax, and we will deliver a record infrastructure spend. My plan involves 6-laning the M1, delivering the Cross River Rail now, and $15 billion of upgrades to the Bruce Highway. We will build the new schools and upgrade existing facilities, refurbish TAFEs, and continue to invest in hospital expansions. My team has the plan to put Queenslanders first. Combined, my government's promises will create over 60,000 new jobs. In stark contrast, the alternative to Labor's clear plan is the chaos of a one-nation coalition with Tim Nicholls as Premier. A chaotic coalition with a plan to cut, sack and sell. A chaotic coalition that supports cutting penalty rates for work on Sundays. A chaotic coalition that supports weakening John Howard's tough national gun laws. A chaotic coalition where one partner thinks it's okay for fathers to breach protection orders, even those designed to protect their children. A chaotic coalition where One Nation started with 11 members in 1998 and by 2000 had not one MP left as One Nation in the Queensland Parliament. The alternative to Labor is an LNP One Nation coalition, which will cut, sack, sell, infight, desert each other, call each other untrustworthy, and on the same day, and yet all want to run our great state for their own benefit. The LNP showed yesterday that their values have not changed, and their objectives remain the same as they were under Campbell-Newman. Once again, the LNP will make Queenslanders pay the cost. They will cut infrastructure funding by $970 million. They will cut job-supporting programs, including skilling Queenslanders for work and back to work. They will cut domestic violence support. They will cut the health budget by $450 million. Think about that for a moment. Think about the services that are provided to families across the state and what those cuts will mean to health. They will cut jobs. Tim Nicholls said at the 2012 election that his public service efficiency measure would involve no forced redundancies, then sacked 14,000 workers. He sacked 14,000 workers to save $1.2 billion last time. He could now sack 20,000 if he wants to save $1.6 billion this time. Faced with this, I believe Queenslanders will stop Tim Nicholls and the LNP and One Nation. He did enough damage last time, and Queenslanders don't want him to have another chance. The published polls, friends, show that the election is going to be close tomorrow. The polls show that there is a clear choice between a Labor majority or an LNP, One Nation coalition to govern our great state. Tim Nicholls hasn't got the support to win in his own right, which is why he has so cravenly courted Pauline Hanson. When asked, Tim Nicholls refuses to give a straight answer. If he cannot give a straight answer about how he would form a government, how can anyone trust him to give straight answers if he was ever back in government? In July, the Courier-Mail asked me to sign a statutory declaration that the paper had drafted. The newspaper wanted me to sign a declaration that said, and I quote, Labor will not enter into any deal, agreement, power-sharing arrangement or formal coalition with One Nation after the upcoming election. I signed it with my own extra stipulations that Labor would not do a deal before as well as after the election, and that Labor will put One Nation last. My office was told that the Courier-Mail had supplied a similar statutory declaration for Mr Nicholls to sign. Neither Mr Nicholls nor the Courier-Mail have released his statutory declaration. I tabled mine in the Queensland Parliament, and I have left copies for each and every one of you here today to take with you when you leave. Ladies and gentlemen, whether Mr Nicholls has signed the statutory declaration or not, he has clearly done a deal with One Nation. Whether or not Mr Nicholls has passed the Courier-Mail test, he has failed the leadership test. Mr Nicholls is a leader without substance and without the values to lead. Mr Nicholls will happily have a Liberal or One Nation member win tomorrow because either puts him closer to being Premier. Now is the time to stop this deal in its tracks. To those looking to vote Liberal tomorrow, I say, a vote for the Liberals is a vote for a One Nation coalition led by Tim Nicholls. To those thinking of voting Liberal tomorrow, your vote counts. Every single vote will count tomorrow. And make no mistakes, it will be close. In many seats across Queensland, your party, the LNP, are directing your preferences to One Nation. But ultimately, it is your vote. It is not the LNP's. Your choice is to support a One Nation coalition or just this time vote Labor for a strong, stable majority government. Queenslanders do have a clear choice to make. It's a choice between a stable Labor majority or an LNP One Nation coalition. It's a choice between a party that has delivered 134,300 jobs since coming to office or one that has slashed and sacked 14,000 Queenslanders within their first 12 months. It's a choice between the Labor Party, who will never do a deal with One Nation, or an LNP One Nation coalition that is all about wheeling and dealing. In conclusion, I say to Queenslanders, it is an honour to be your Premier. I am humbled by the support that Queenslanders have given me and my team. But I am not done yet. With your support, I want to continue to serve every one of you and keep delivering as your Premier. Every day I wake up with a single focus of delivering jobs for Queenslanders. Every day I wake up wanting to make Queensland a better place to live, work and invest. Every day I wake up with a simple mission to put Queenslanders first. Tomorrow when you wake, you have a choice. You have a very clear choice. A choice to take Queensland forward or let it fall back. A choice to build our economy fairly or to cut, sack and sell. A choice between a majority Labor government or a divided, squabbling One Nation coalition. Tomorrow I ask Queenslanders to exercise that choice. Tomorrow I ask Queenslanders for your vote to get on with the job of putting Queenslanders first. Thank you.
If you'd like to take a seat, Premier, I'll keep my distance because I'm coming down with some sort of lurgy. Well timed. How are you feeling?
Good, good.
Before the last election, you had an idea how that would go. What did you say back then?
I think it was like climbing Mount Everest, and I think tomorrow is exactly the same. It is no different. There is essentially 93 by-elections that will be happening across this state, and as I said then, and I'll say it again now, every single vote matters tomorrow. Every single vote. And I want every person going into that ballot box to think, what sort of Queensland do you want? What sort of Queensland do you want for yourself and your families? And at the end of the day, I honestly believe that the people of this state will want to see us continue to go forwards and not lurch backwards.
Were you confident before the last election?
I was slightly confident. You know, you've got to believe in yourself.
What about now?
This is what I tell students all the time. I say to students across Queensland, believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to? You have to believe in yourself.
Do you have that same sense of confidence now?
I believe in the people of our state. I meet them every day. I'm inspired by them. They drive me. They're always stopping and talking to me. And that's what I want them to do. I want them to tell me about their families and what they're feeling and what they're thinking and what their hopes and aspirations are. And at the end of the day, that's what a government needs to do. You need to care about people. You need to listen to people. And I honestly am very concerned about the alternative prospect. And that's why, Shane, it is going to be so important tomorrow. I don't want anyone to underestimate what is at stake. What is at stake tomorrow is the difference between a forward, outward-looking Queensland or one that turns inward, where we go back to the fights, where we go back to the feeling of exclusion, where we become divided again. That's not the sort of Queensland we want or need in this state. Our best days are ahead of us. I think everyone sitting in this room would believe that.
Okay. My friends in the gallery will have some questions. They're all well rested after the past 27 days, full of good humour. Looks like it's Sarah Elks from the Australian.
Hi Premier, how are you? Premier, you've criticised Opposition Leader Tim Nicholls in your speech for failing to be straight with Queenslanders about his intentions on One Nation. You've also staked your integrity on your decision to veto the Adani loan. However, there are still some questions that remain unanswered about that. When was it that Queensland decided it would not facilitate the NAIF loan to Adani? Was it in May, as senior members of your government have told us, or was it at the end of the first week of the campaign, as you told Queenslanders?
Thanks, Sarah, and it's of course no surprise that you would be asking me about Adani today, as you have nearly every single day of the election campaign. But let me make it very clear. There was an LNP smear that was generated from Canberra. I made a very clear decision to avoid any perceived conflict to exercise that veto. That veto was exercised, but let me also make it very clear that it is consistent with our election commitment, and our election commitment was not to have taxpayers' money used to build the railway line.
So just to clarify, was the decision made in May, or was it made at the end of the first week of the campaign?
I exercised my decision to use the veto during the first week of the campaign.
Premier Mark Ludlow from the Financial Review. You told ABC Radio this morning that you'd been upfront and honest with voters throughout this election campaign. But the Treasurer came out yesterday and dropped 4 new taxes or increased taxes 2 days before an election. How is that being open and upfront?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I think it is being open up front because I want to be open and upfront with Queenslanders about, any new methods of raising revenue. And I think many commentators have referred to it as Robin Hood. I don't mind being compared to Robin Hood in terms of less than 1% of Queenslanders will be impacted. So, for example, if you own a luxury car over $100,000, yes, you will pay more. If you own property in this state over $10 million worth, excluding your principal place of residence, yes, you will pay more. If you're an investor from overseas looking at buying property here in Queensland, yes, you will pay more. I honestly believe that impacting on less than 1% of Queenslanders is a just and fair position to take, especially when my job as Premier is to deliver services to Queenslanders. And whether that's health or education or to our most vulnerable, people with a disability, I will look at all avenues that I can to raise revenue. And I believe in being upfront because I think I would not have been able to look Queenslanders in the eye to have done that after the election. I have been absolutely upfront, and that is a hallmark of my credibility.
Premier Jackson Williams from Sky News. Just to follow on from Sarah's question, your decision on the Friday of the first week of the campaign to veto the Adani loan was really a central point in the election campaign. You said you did so because LNP senators were planning to orchestrate a smear campaign. What evidence do we have of this smear campaign? You haven't divulged any details about who was behind it. If you want Queenslanders to trust you, why can't you say who was responsible for it? Because on the surface, there really is no evidence that this smear campaign actually existed. Well,
it was conveyed, thank you, Jackson, it was conveyed to me that it was happening around Canberra, and then I took the action.
Was this a case of pragmatism coming before principle? Because Adani was the great saviour up until that point. So had you seen a poll? Was it?
I had seen nothing, Shane, but there was the smear campaign was starting, and if you want to see any further evidence of it, I think you only have to look at Senator Matt Canavan's comments after I made that decision, where I think he made very disrespectful comments about me. They were very personal. I think you can judge me in terms of how I conducted myself during the campaign. I have not referred to the Leader of the Opposition in any such terms as I was referred to. And, I'm being honest about that.
Premier Felicity Caldwell from Brisbane Times. You promised to keep the growth in the public service aligned to population growth, but you've really struggled to meet that commitment so far. Will you be able to meet that going forward in your next term if you win?
Thanks, Felicity, and that's a very good question. And yes, we will. It is one of our fiscal principles. But let me make it very clear. By October next year, we will probably reach around 5 million people in this state. Now, we have some very remote communities. I've travelled up to places such as Arakoon, Kawanyama, I've been up to Weipa, I've been to the Torres Strait, I've been to Borgu Island, I've been to Mer Island. And when you travel to these remote areas, it just confirms to me how important it is for people to have access to good quality healthcare, but also educational services. And that is why, and I used the example at our campaign launch, I went to Mer Island, the women took me into their health centre and they said to me, Annastacia, our men and women, our adults, don't fit into this health service. And they showed me how they could not move around. They could not operate there, how their medical equipment was running out. I immediately went back, I spoke to Cameron Dick, we sent urgent medical supplies up there. This is about listening to Queenslanders. And we are now going to build a brand new medical centre on Mer Island, one of our most remote communities in Queensland. You know, a very passionate community, loves Queensland just like you and I do, but they are very remote and they deserve those services. They deserve those nurses. I can still remember when I was opposition leader, I went out to Morven, out near Charleville, and they sacked, Tim Nichols sacked, the only health professional, the only nurse in that town. And what they said to me is if their child got a snake bite, they were absolutely concerned that their child would die because they did not have the assistance of a medical practitioner. So I make no apologies for giving Queenslanders the services that they need. But will we meet our fiscal principle? Yes, we will honour that fiscal principle in line with population growth. But I'll tell you one thing I won't do. I won't sack ever 14,000 people. They were not just dots on a piece of paper. They were real people with real lives and real families. And that had a huge impact on regional Queensland. And we have been repairing the damage done by Tim Nichols and Campbell Newman over the past 3 years. And the job is not done yet.
Premier, just a quick question though. When do you think you'll be able to meet that commitment?
We will always strive to meet that commitment. And like I said to you, our population growth is continuing to grow. We are going to be at 5 million people by around October next year. So we will always strive to meet that fiscal principle.
Premier Chris O'Brien from the ABC, you've said that people tomorrow have a choice. Will you respect that choice? A lot of people are going to vote for a minor party. Will you respect their choice to vote for a minor party? And probably more particularly, will you respect that choice by working with the outcome of that choice?
Thanks, Chris, and I respect the people of this state. I do respect their right to vote however they want to. But as I said, there is a clear choice about a majority Labor government bringing in good, decent, hard-working government as opposed to the cuts and chaos of Tim Nichols and One Nation. And I also want to make this very clear point. There are a lot of people out there, and I met a small business owner last night. He said to me he's voted LNP his entire life. And tomorrow he is thinking for the first time ever of voting Labor. And he said to me, it's because he does not share the values of One Nation. And how could Tim Nichols have done a deal with One Nation? This is a very important question for people out there who have been long-term LNP voters. They need to think very carefully as they go into that voting booth tomorrow, because what they will be doing is they will be voting for a coalition. Now, even Campbell Newman himself, and I don't often quote Campbell Newman, even Campbell Newman himself said, Tim Nichols cannot form government in his own right. Tim Nicholls can only form government by a coalition with One Nation. That is the only way. And that is why there is a clear choice tomorrow for the people of this state.
I totally get why you would urge people not to vote for a minor party. But if they do, will you respect that outcome?
Of course I will respect that outcome, but I have taken a principled stance. I would rather go into opposition than see a LNP, One Nation government in this state, because that is the clear alternative that people have. I want to see a majority Labor government. I want to continue the good work that we have been doing. And I know there is a lot of people in this room today from the business sector. And I want you to think long and hard. My government and my ministers have worked very closely with the business and industry sector right across this state. We've had an open door policy. How are you going to feel about walking into the doors of an LNP One Nation government? How are you going to feel about doing business? What sort of message is that going to send to the rest of the world? What sort of message is that going to send? I think these are very important questions that every Queenslander will ask themselves tomorrow when they walk into that polling booth where they are faced with a very clear choice.
Premier, I'm hoping you can clarify something for me because I'm a little bit confused. You talk about Tim Nicholls cravenly courting Pauline Hanson without evidence. The only images we've seen of a non-One Nation person hugging Pauline Hanson is Joanne Miller, one of your own MPs. So I'm a little bit confused. Can you clear up what happened there?
Yeah, sure, Patrick. She was being nice in terms of giving. People are allowed to be nice in politics. She was giving a gift to her grandson. And let me make this point.
So the only person...
let me make this point,
sorry,
Patrick.
The only person who has cosied up to One Nation is a Labor MP.
Excuse me, there are buses driving around with LNP signs on one side of them and on the back of it, One Nation. There are people handing out LNP how to vote cards and One Nation at the same time.
But you can understand the confusion when you're talking about that, and yet the only non-One Nation person who has hugged Pauline Hanson is a Labor MP.
And Joanne knows very clearly our position and she supports my position.
Was there another question from the gallery?
Sarah Vogler, Courier Mail. Just back to your costings. Treasurer Curtis Pitt announced that you would be saving $800 million through a centralised cash management treasury offset. Can you explain what that actually means, where you'll get that money from?
That's Treasury accounting, Sarah, and it's a cash management process that they institute to actually save money. So, you know, their question's directed to the Treasurer. I'm happy to get back to you on that one.
Hi, I'm Amy Ramikas from Guardian Australia. I've got two questions. Firstly, you promised us a new debt reduction plan and that was missing from your costings yesterday. Can you explain that?
Well, there's 6 pages there.
But none of it was for debt reduction.
Yes, there was. There was
but
6
not new.
pages.
It wasn't new.
There were 6 pages, and let me make it very clear. Debt is $12 billion less. We promised 10. We've actually delivered $12 billion less than when Tim Nicholls was in office.
But what was new about it?
Well, we're still going to continue to reduce debt in this state. It is always going to continue to be a priority.
But no new plan to reduce debt?
It's there for 6 pages. It goes through it for 6 pages, Amy.
And secondly, just on Adani, and I think it's unfair to pick on reporters for continuing to ask about a question that does impact this state. You have said that no taxpayer funds will go to Adani. Can you say now whether that includes council roads and associated infrastructure?
No taxpayers' money are going towards the mine directly.
So for indirectly though, for Isaac Council?
There is actually, if you go to the Coordinators General statement, there is a condition there that they have to pay for any associated costs to do with roads, whether they be local or council.
So you're going to say
state.
to the Isaac Mayor, no, you will not take those roads off her books?
She has not raised any of those issues with me personally, Amy.
But she
and
has
as I
with
said,
the state government
well,
since
well, they
February.
have to abide by the Coordinator General's decision, and the Coordinator General's decision has a very clear condition there that talks very clearly about that principle, and Adani has to abide by that. And let me also say, I answer every question a journalist puts to me to the best of my capability. And if I don't know the answer, I am honest and upfront, and I say to journalists that I will get back. I have stood there and answered questions up to 40 minutes from journalists. I respect journalism in this state.
So you can say now, directly and indirectly, Adani will not receive any state government funds.
What I said is they have to abide by the Coordinator General's conditions that have been placed. And I have quoted that to you. And they have to abide by that.
Premier Stuart Late from AAP. The poll out today suggests that we do have a divided state, that if you do win the government tomorrow, it will be through the South East Queensland seats and that the regions will have largely abandoned you. How do you prevent that from becoming exacerbated into the future? How do you bring the state together and prevent a move away from the major parties to prevent a situation like One Nation or something like that happening into the future at the next election?
Look, thank you very much. And look, that's a very good question. And I want a united Queensland. And that's exactly what I've been working hard to do over the last 3 years. In fact, my government changed the way in which we engage with regional Queensland. So I started a process where we would actually spend a week governing from the regions, which I believe was very effective in terms of getting out and talking to people, being able to go and visit people's places of employment, talking to business organisations, meeting with industry and talking to councils to see their priorities. What we have seen though is some regions have still been largely impacted by the downturn in the resources industry, but also too, they have felt the savage cuts that were impacted by Tim Nichols and Campbell Newman. I believe that we need to continually work with regional Queensland, and if you don't understand regional Queensland, you don't understand all of Queensland, because we live in such a large state. I have done my best to get out to regional Queensland as much as possible, and we are seeing the turnaround of some really key economic drivers. For example, tourism. The number of tourists that are coming to our state now is incredible, and through our Aviation Attraction Fund, we will get more and more international flights here. For instance, in Cairns, I believe Cairns is really the gateway into Asia. We have so many opportunities if we continue to work with different countries to continue to promote tourism in this state. But also too, our agricultural sector is going from strength to strength. And we've seen the growth in areas such as chickpeas. I know everyone loves me mentioning chickpeas. And I might have made a bet with someone to mention it today. But we're actually, you know, for me to understand that industry, people were telling me the growth in this industry. Actually went out to a farm and met with the farmers to understand how they're growing, what do they need, if we're going to grow more and export more, what is the infrastructure we need to put in place? And that is the sort of government I lead, one that is prepared to go out, have a look and talk to people. And finally, I might just mention Western Queensland. People sat around a kitchen table and told me that there was a huge impact of wild dogs on the sheep industry. They suggested to me that if we worked together to build cluster fencing, we could keep the wild dogs out and restore the sheep industry in this state. We have now built the equivalent of 5,000 kilometres of cluster fencing in Western Queensland, 3 times the size of the length of the Bruce Highway. And lambing rates have now gone from 20% to nearly 90%. And that is about bringing the sheep industry back in Queensland. So I will continue to work with all of Queensland, no matter where Queenslanders live.
Do you reckon after this election you can leave Campbell Newman alone? I mean, the voters have already executed the fellow once. You keep digging him up, want to kill him again. Do you think after this election we can let the poor fellow die?
He's a political commentator now, Shane. I don't think
anybody can do that.
Anyone can do that.
Sorry, I just can't see through the lights.
Premier, it's Jeff Egan from News Regional. Just following from Stuart's question, you've spent the vast majority of this campaign in regional Queensland, but the poll today shows that those voters are turning away from you. What's happened there? Why are people turning away from Labor in regional Queensland? Have you wasted your time this election?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Queensland's a huge state, and I've spent a lot of time during this campaign in regional Queensland. And hopefully, if we are re-elected on tomorrow, on Saturday, I would continue to spend equally as much time in regional Queensland. And like I said to you, Queensland is such a big state. The regional towns up and down the coast have different needs and have different aspirations. And it is my job as Premier to do everything I can to promote more jobs. The key thing here is the number one issue for people is employment and jobs. And we are starting to see the turnaround in the economy, and that is because we are working with people. I might leave you with this note. With our Back to Work program, that came out of regional Queensland. I took my work in Queensland Cabinet Committee after the collapse of Queensland Nickel to Townsville, and we travelled around. And people said to me, the best way we can get people into employment and into a job is if the government can help business employ people. We now have 8,000 people employed in regional Queensland through one program that my government supported, which is Back to Work. That means industry and business are working with me to give people that opportunity to get a job. And also with our Skilling Queenslanders for Work. These are employment programs aimed at getting young people into work and getting them the training that they need. So if we're going to continue that good work, let me remind everyone once again, tomorrow there is a very clear choice. And I want everyone to think long and hard when they go to vote tomorrow. What sort of Queensland do you want for you and your family?
Let's do another one. Tegan, I think. Tegan
Premier,
George.
Tegan George from Channel 10. You've worked quite a bit with Katter's Australian Party in the last term. Why rule out cutting a deal with them to form a minority government and cite integrity?
Look, I have a very good working relationship with both Robbie and Shane. But on matters of principle, we don't agree on things such as they want to weaken the gun laws. I don't believe in weakening our gun laws. And that is why I will not form a government with the Katter Australia Party.
There being no more questions from the gallery, we have a lucky door prize to draw. It's a bottle of very nice wine, I believe, and I hope it goes to someone who doesn't like wine, because I scored a bottle last time I was here.
You'll have to read it. I don't have my glasses with me.
Carol Pease, dial before you dig. Carol, do you like wine? And that concludes today's Media Club lunch. Thank you very much, Premier, for being with us. I hope you all found it enlightening. All the very best for tomorrow. Thank you, Shane. Thanks.